So, hi again, everyone. Welcome to the last financial services breakout session for the day. The topic is Beyond Channels, Creating Connected, Outcome-Driven Client Experiences. And I'm going to spend some time talking about what that actually means. And then we're going to see a quick demo of how Smart Communications portfolio of solutions can help you create a connected, outcome-driven client experience. But first, we've been talking about this word a lot over the last 2 days. And trust really is the foundation of the entire financial services industry. I talk about this all the time, actually. A little history lesson, and I've sort of previewed this for a bunch of people. In the 17th century, the Netherlands was a European financial powerhouse, and that was not by mistake. The country built themselves up as a financial hub by creating a trusted public debt system, a system with covenants, promises, and trust. So that meant if you borrowed money in the Netherlands, you were very likely to pay it back, and that if you lent money, that you were very likely to get the money back. Why is any of that important? The reason why that's important is because at the time, this was in contrast to other European monarchs who would demand money via promissory debt and then wouldn't keep that promise. They just would never pay it back. So today, we're not talking about that kind of promise, the promise between countries and monarchs, but because we're talking about the trust between you and your clients, the idea, though, is really the same. Each of you are part of an organization whose clients have entrusted you with their money. And responsible stewardship of your clients' assets mean helping them achieve better outcomes. That's primarily what you guys are doing. So why does this matter? In financial services, many client experiences are about how a firm can take the complex, it could be an investment, it could be anything, be advice, transaction, and make it feel simple, personal, and trustworthy. Aside from the fact that you have been entrusted with the task of helping your client achieve better financial outcomes, why is this so critical to address now? You really don't need to look very hard to understand why. There's all kinds of stats. We've got a couple of them up here, showing that clients are dissatisfied and they're looking for the same services you offer elsewhere. 33% of high net worth individuals are currently dissatisfied with the digital services their firms offer. That includes digital communications, it includes how you access the client portal, everything. And if those experiences don't feel cohesive, it can be detrimental to the trust that they've tried to place in you and that you're trying to build in that client relationship. In our own benchmark report, 8 out of 10 Gen Z clients say that they're likely to use digital self-service options for completing tasks. That's great. It's great because that means we're offering multiple channels to complete things. But if it's not connected, and again, what you're seeing is that they may do something that you don't even know about. They go online and they do something you know about. They'll go online and make a beneficiary change because they had a child. But if you're their advisor or relationship manager, isn't that the kind of information that you'd want to know in order to move the relationship forward, to help them with better financial outcomes for both their family and for that child? Similarly, 76% of Gen Z already seek financial advice online or via social media. If they're seeking this information outside of the relationship you have with you, where you are trying to guide them, is it actually a better outcome for them? And finally, 79% of customers expect consistent interactions across departments. But the problem is that 55% think that it feels like they're communicating with different departments, separate departments, and not one company. That means the handoffs from your advisor and RMs to the client service team to operations, all of that needs to feel seamless. So we have some headwinds here, just based on what the stats say. But the experience gap is rarely caused by a single bad interaction. It usually comes from fragmentation between interactions. Client submits something online, gets an email that feels sort of impersonal, calls for an update, the advisor can't see the information they're talking about. They receive documents that don't reflect the latest context. So each of those moments, like if they were individually happening, they are probably survivable on its own, but together, it creates doubt, and so is mistrust. The firms that are going to stand out are the ones that are not necessarily creating more of these communications, they're creating continuity in the entire process, a connected experience. They're reducing repetition and really sequencing all the actions in a way that feels sort of much more intentional. So that really is the essence of an outcome-driven experience. Every step should either move the client forward, remove some type of uncertainty, or prepare for the next step automatically. And in your companies, there are a number of these experiences in a client's life cycle that we could talk about that could be a connected, outcome-driven journey. But today we're going to talk about onboarding, because at a minimum, every single one of your clients goes through this. A typical onboarding journey starts with the discovery period. So that can happen where you're just gathering basic information, their name, just basic information about your client, and maybe you're putting it in a CRM system. And that moves into collecting, once they've committed to you, collecting more of your client's data when they've made that commitment. And of course, that entire process, the whole onboarding process, encapsulates many different activities. But at the end of the day, when all that data collection is complete and accounts are set up, the need to communicate to that client about what's happening is paramount. Some of the communications are based on regulatory requirement, like the Form ADV that you have to provide. Others are basic client communications, like a welcome kit or a status update. Beyond that communication period, though, there's ongoing service requests that are typical of a client's life cycle, but even some of these requests are dependent upon that data that you've collected at the very beginning. So for example, if you collected the correct data at the beginning, you'll be able to fulfill a client's request correctly a year later. And then finally, when the onboarding journey is complete, how do you advance it? What comes next? What's the next task? When is the next annual review? When is the next outreach that you have for this client? What could a fully connected journey actually look like? So we're gonna look at a demo. I hope this works. Yay. Okay. So at this point, what you're seeing is that a prospect has agreed to become a client and onboarding begins. So that process, you could have used a data collection tool like SmartIQ to collect some information, or very often it's just some very basic information that you've already put in your CRM system. So we now have an advisor who's worked with a client, or a relationship manager who's worked with a client and has kicked off the process. In this case, it will be kicked off in SmartPATH. The whole journey is kicked off in SmartPATH. SmartPATH then tells SmartIQ, we're going to start that client account opening process. In SmartIQ, the advisor in this case is going to put in some basic information to kick off a client interview, and we'll look at that in a second. But what's going to happen first is that we need to tell SmartIQ who we're doing this for. We can say that it's a new client, that the information actually has not already been captured, or we can choose an existing client. And that existing client already exists in the CRM system. This is connected to the CRM system, so there's Rose Gonzalez. It's also important to know that if you chose new client and they're not in the CRM system, there is a push to, so you could have that moved into the system as well. We don't have an email address for Rose, though, so we're going to put an email address in for her and then move on. The next thing that we have is that, and you'll see this when the entire package is created later, but we have a personalized message that we can add. So this is the top part is not editable, so that's a standard welcome letter. But if you as an advisor want to include some information or add additional welcome to the family type of messaging, you can add that. And so we're adding thank you for choosing Accordant, which is the wealth manager in this case. This part is where, and you have probably, and you saw this in an earlier case, where you can choose additional forms to include in a package. and to be filled out. So for example, we've got KYC, beneficiary designation, ACAT, ACH form. We already have 2 that are already actually pre-selected, and we're going to deselect one, which is KYC. And this is great because it can automatically say, guess what, you can't deselect KYC. Or if you do, you need to give us a reason. At this point, let's say that we actually left this unclicked and we decided that we weren't going to include a KYC form in the whole package, or we weren't going to respond to any of the KYC questions. We'd have to put a reason, and then our entire process that's working in the background could route this to compliance to review before anything else happens. But we know we're good compliance folks, so we're gonna use the KYC form. And here's your basic KYC questions. So we've got a couple that we're gonna say no to, but we're gonna say yes to, we think Rose might actually be a senior public figure. So we're gonna say yes, and then as soon as we say yes, it opens up an additional page for a KYC addendum so that we have to answer some additional questions for her. So this just shows that we're not always including the KYC addendum. It's just, it is adaptive based on what answers you or the client is providing. But turns out Rose is not a senior public figure, so we're gonna say no. And then at this point, we've captured all the basic information, and we've designed this process where we can either have the advisor do a white glove process and help the client finish the interview with them, so side by side, or we could have the client just do it on their own. If we had the client do it on their own, what would happen is essentially they would get an email that would ask them to go to a link with a one-time password and fill out all of the information that we're going to see securely. But in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to have the advisor, we're going to go the white glove route, and we're going to have the advisor fill it out. And it takes us directly to the interview. And these are all the questions that we need to capture in order to fill out all the onboarding paperwork. So the first thing you'll notice is that we're just capturing some basic information that we just haven't gotten yet. The first one is the Social Security number. If we put in the Social Security number, you can see, put in the Social Security number, it's always it's gonna require that you put in 9 digits. And then a phone number will require 10. And as soon as we clicked out of the Social Security number, it masked the Social Security number. So it's secure, very secure. And then on the address, the first thing that you'll notice is that it pulls in the address from the CRM, or if you've captured it already, it pulls it into the form. So they don't have to go and fill it out. You don't have to fill it out. It's already in there. But let's say that it's actually not correct. You could actually go back and say, no, this is not correct, and then change the mailing address. The next thing that happens is, and very often, let's say everybody has this experience when you're buying something, what's the mailing address and what's the billing address? In this case, is your legal address actually different from your mailing address? If it is, you can click on that box and then it'll pop up additional address fields. This is, again, one of those things where you're only surfacing questions and fields that are required to be filled out. So they're not going to see this if they don't have a different legal address. And then at this point, we've got ACH. So we're requiring, if you recall from when the advisor kicked off the process, we required ACH information. We put the ACH information in. We're going to choose that it's checking. What's great about this is that we can actually upload artifacts to SmartIQ. So you saw that this morning with the insurance example. It could be any kind of artifact. In this case, we're going to do a voided check. So we're going to upload that voided check. And then you can actually view what that check looks like. So we can see the check that we've uploaded. And then another capability that SmartIQ has is the ability to calculate. You can put in formulas. So in this case, we have already captured some financial details about this particular client, and it is totaling up assets and liabilities. So if we went in and we actually changed any of these numbers, it would automatically change the total assets or the total liabilities depending on which one of those we changed. So very adaptive. And then if there are any additional account holders, we can add them here. And this, we can really add unlimited number of account holders, but we can just, again, it is one of those adaptive processes. If we said no, then we just move on. If we say yes, then it'll bring up exactly the information that we need to fill out. Who are the account holders? What's their email address? What permissions are we giving them? So we've got one who gets to do all the things. He's withdrawing funds, depositing funds, and transferring funds. But then we have one more person we want to add to the account. Tony, he can't withdraw funds. He can deposit them, he can transfer them, but he can't withdraw them. SmartIQ is great also for capturing things like consent as well. So for example, electronic delivery consent. Now remember, we're doing this with our client sitting next to us or maybe on the phone or on Zoom. Which means that we're actually clicking this for them. But the reason why that's important is because you're going to see that show up in our end package where they actually have to sign off on it. So we're going to say, yes, she's fine with electronic delivery consent, and then move to disclosures. So disclosures like the Form ADV, you can see Form ADV Part 1A and 2A, and the Form CRS. You can actually have them uploaded to SmartIQ so that they can actually download them, or they can just view them. So you can see here's the Part 1A of Form ADV, and then you can have an acknowledgement here too. That will also show up in the end package. And then now we've got this application summary. This is all the information that we've captured up to this point. So we're going to click next, and then submit for signature. So this is exactly where, at the end of the process, you've collected everything. Now we're going to create the package where we've collected all that data, pushed all the information where it needs to go. So like name goes in your custodial account application, it goes into the investment management agreement. So we're gonna submit, and then SmartPATH sends an SMS notification to the client saying, you've got some documents to review. So it'll let them know via email and SMS. And here's, in this case, it's the DocuSign package that has all of the information that we need them to execute, all the documents they need to execute. So you can see on this very first page, it has that extra line, thank you for putting your trust in Accordant. That was from the personalization that we did in the very, very beginning. You can see on this page, the receipt of disclosure document and consent to e-delivery are already checked. So all they need to do is initial and sign, and then finish. Once those documents get back to the wealth manager, accounts, and then of course are opened at the custodian, and then in the systems, in the portfolio management system at the wealth manager, and then you're ready to do more things. So for example, we have all the packages done. With Smart Communications, SmartCOMM has created a welcome kit. We've got all the documents that were executed and then any other communications. So we're going to log in now as the client and see what that looks like. So we've got the welcome kit here. This is a welcome kit that has been developed by SmartCOMM that uses all the information that we already collected in order to create context and create a personalized welcome kit, including things like, okay, obviously it's for Rose Gonzalez, but information like who's their advisor, who are their support staff, and maybe what their portfolio looks like. This is the onboarding notification, so that's the communication that we sent them, and the signed onboarding documents, which is the entire package that they just executed. All of those documents got pushed to Smart Hub, so our archival solution, and they are being pulled directly from Smart Hub into the client portal. And that is the full demo, and I'm gonna go back to.
Can we see it again?
Let's go back here. Okay. Okay, so this is really about where the conversation shifts from aspiration, so just thinking about what that might look like to a true operating model. Outcome-driven experiences really require 4 things to work. First, you need to capture that data and the intent there cleanly. Second, you need to generate the right communications and content from that context that you've just captured. Third, you need a place where clients and even internal teams can access what they need without losing the thread that you've created from the first 2 steps. And then fourth, you need all that to be orchestrated in workflow orchestration so that the journey just keeps on moving. When those capabilities are disconnected, teams do what they always do, which is they compensate manually, and it makes it difficult for everybody. When they are connected, the journey itself becomes smarter and more resilient. And notice on this slide, this is not about onboarding. Nothing about this says onboarding specifically. These same principles apply to a lot of different workflows. So servicing, account changes, any journey where the client is trying to do something important. What you see here is familiar, as we saw this on the main stage. It's how that connected future really does come to life. It starts with SmartIQ, collecting client intent, context, and data just once. And then using that information intelligently as the journey unfolds, rather than asking clients again for the same information at different steps of the process. That same context then powers SmartCOMM to compose personalized, compliant communications, ensuring that what you send reflects where the client actually is in their journey and what they provided, not just where a system might think that they are. And then from there, clients and advisors or your relationship managers, any of your internal teams, they have now a shared connected place in Smart Hub to archive and access information and review documents so that everyone's working off the same page and not separate versions of it. And then finally, all of that is really held together by SmartPATH orchestrating workflow, decisions, and next actions so the journey keeps moving forward intentionally, visibly, and with purpose. So as we wrap up, I want to bring us back to where we started. This conversation really was actually never about channels. It was about outcomes, and more importantly, it was about that big word I put up, which was trust. Throughout the presentation, we talked about how fragmented clients slowly erode sort of that confidence that they have in your firm. When clients have to repeat themselves, when communications feel generic, when information is scattered, when journeys stall, individually, those moments, they do actually seem small in the moment, but collectively, they're going to shape how trustworthy your firm feels to your clients, and connected, outcome-driven experiences are what close that gap. So when these capabilities are connected, the 4 that we were talking about, client journeys become smoother, but more importantly, every interaction that follows that becomes stronger. And like I said, servicing, account chases, and any of these life events, they all benefit from this same foundation. So the firms that really win trust going forward, again, won't be the ones that create more touch points. They'll be the ones who design experience that feel cohesive, personal, and that are clearly focused on helping clients achieve better outcomes. And that's what we mean by moving beyond channels, and that's the connected experience that Smart Communication supports.